G'day, ZiggyD here, and welcome back for Monday Musings, the show where I ramble for 5 to 15 minutes and occasionally you guys get something out of it. Today's episode is a little special because it's coming to you from Santa Monica in the USA, near Los Angeles. I've been spending a couple days here for a gaming press event, which is secret at the moment, but I'll be able to reveal to you guys in, I don't know, a while's time. But it has been good fun, and there are some pretty nice views. I'm standing in front of... You might be able to see it there if I focus in on it. There's like a Ferris wheel and a roller coaster and stuff. It's on like a wharf pier thing. I've never really seen one of those before, but I've seen them referenced on TV and stuff. So I guess that's the, that's more of an American thing. But pretty cool, pretty cool. So hopefully it'll set a bit of cool atmosphere, and hopefully the wind isn't too noisy for you guys today. So today's Monday Musings topic, and it has been a while since my last Monday Musings, I apologise. Today's topic is on how and why I'm always so positive. This is a bit of a personality thing for myself that, for some people, really gets on their nerves, that I'm always so positive all the time. And I can understand it would be a bit hard to see why that is actually the case, and hopefully I can give you guys some insight into that sort of my approach to life in that regard in this video here. So there's a couple different parts to this, and the first is what I kind of coined the cynicism cycle. And I wasn't always so positive. In fact, during my schooling years and in university and things like that as well, I was often quite the cynic. And I sort of learned that from being a part of that is that being cynical feeds into itself constantly, and after a while I discovered that it was actually quite exhausting to maintain that cycle of cynicism, because it really feeds into itself. So here's kind of like something I'm sure you guys have all been part of. Maybe you're at college or school or something like that, and you start a new class, and you sit down and you're talking to someone you've never met before, and you usually relate to them in a cynical sort of manner. You're like, this class is going to be terrible, man. This is going to be so boring. And you approach the entire class with that mindset. And of course, when you approach things with that mindset, you're closing off any potential enjoyment that you might have had from it. Now, occasionally you'll be surprised and, your cynicism will be forced away. But a lot of the time, you confirm your initial bias towards the situation or towards whatever you're going to be doing. Now, I'm not sure what initially prompted it, but at some point I kind of reflected on my approach to various things in life and this idea of approaching things as an inherent cynic. And I realized that it was something that was really lessening my enjoyment of a lot of things that, in hindsight, I might have enjoyed quite a bit. Whenever I was going for a trip or starting a new class or going and doing an event or something like that, I'd approach it as a cynic, and before I got there, I'd talk myself down as much as possible and, set myself up for not really enjoying things. And that was often the result of it. And I ended up, as a result, just kind of spending a lot of time not doing things instead because, they were going to be crap anyway. Why would I even bother, right? So that sort of cynicism cycle, I realized, was actually lessening my enjoyment of life as a whole. So I started to work on, firstly, just not being a cynic. It's okay to be critical, and being a critic and being critical of something is very different to being a cynic. A particular area where this often manifested itself was also in social relationships. I'd often be like, you know what, I'm not going to make any friends here, I'm not going to have a good time, I'm not going to meet any pretty girls. If I do meet a pretty girl, they're not going to be interested in talking to me. So that was often a situation that was spoiled by this sort of cynicism that I had. And I've talked about this a few times, but one of the times in my life earlier on where I decided to go into it with more of an open mind and to not let myself be a cynic and to actively work against being a cynic was when I went on this cruise one time, this cruise ship. I went there, I think I was like 18 or 19, and I approached it with an open mind instead of being my usual cynical self, saying that, this is going to be boring, it's going to be no one my age, it's going to be no one to talk to. So instead I approached it with as open a mind as possible, and I had a really good time on that trip, and as you guys have probably heard in previous Monday Musings, I socially butterflied during that particular trip and learned quite a bit about myself and confidence and things like that, but also about this idea of being a little more positive towards situations. So through all of this, I found myself starting to enjoy a lot more situations, a lot more things I was doing, and my overall life was full of more enjoyment. So that in itself was enough for me to start looking at, hey, maybe if I approach things a little more positivity, or at least reduce my cynicism a little bit, then maybe I actually can start to enjoy life a little bit more. Not everything needs to be a drag. So, that's the first point. The second point was this idea of using this same strategy that was causing me to have more enjoyment out of the things that I did, to also use it as a mean for personal development as well, to try and improve myself, to make myself a better person, to reflect on situations, and to grow as a person. So this is something that I, became pretty obsessed with in my later teenage years to early 20s, and still am, obviously. And this was this idea of, if you start to frame things in a positive mindset, and I honestly don't know where I picked this up from. It might have just been something that I experimented with and started to discover. But if you started to frame things in a more positive mindset, then you could start to turn negative situations into more learning experiences. So, looking for the positive in any situation. Now, there's certainly situations where there's horrible things that happen in the world where there's no positive possible situation, right, that you can really take out of this. But there are many experiences in life that are inherently negative that you can draw something positive from. And even if it's just learning from a mistake, even if it's just learning from a mistake, that's still a positive thing. So even though something bad happened, even though I was an idiot and crashed my motorcycle into one of my friend's cars because I was riding late and I was exhausted and I didn't head check, even though that happened, which was a terrible thing, and I broke my leg, I mean, some positive things came out of that. I got to hang out with Amy quite a bit, and that founded part of our relationship. That's a side story. But the positive thing from that was, right, I need to really look at the way I approach riding a motorcycle. I really need to learn from this experience so this sort of thing doesn't happen again. There's still something positive that can come out of that. It's very easy to just dwell on the negative thing and to prevent that from letting you do anything again in the future. But if you start to try to put a positive spin on things, just kind of work that muscle to put a positive spin on things, and you can start to learn stuff from it. So the third point I want to talk about on this topic of how and why I'm always so positive is this idea of being a cynic versus being a critic. Now, I'm often accused of never being critical when it comes to assessing games or a lot of things that I do. This comes up quite a bit. And that's because a lot of people aren't able to tell the difference between being a cynic and being a critic. The idea is that if you're going to be critical of something, that you have to be extremely negative towards it. That is being critical. I mean, it's easy to tell someone's being critical of something when they're angry or when they're upset with something or when they are being very negative towards something and using negative words. But you can be extremely critical of something in a positive manner. So, this same idea that I talked about in point 2, of trying to put a positive spin on negative things to try and learn from them, I apply to other things when I'm being critical as well. So even when I'm getting into a situation when there's something I don't like about a video game, I'm still trying to assess the positive out of it, or to try and provide some sort of constructive feedback towards these things. So when it comes to you guys being a critic, or to when you're assessing other people's criticism of things, I would suggest trying to differentiate these two ideas of being a cynic versus being a critic, because I think it is an important distinction to make, and I think it's one that's not made enough. And it is possible to put a positive spin on something while still being very critical, and for me, it makes me enjoy my criticism of things a lot more as well. I actually discovered that many times I would read cynical criticisms of games that I liked, and I would find myself enjoying them less as a result afterwards. Yeah, I'm sure you guys have had this experience in the past, where you've read a cynical, and really negative sounding review, and then you come out of it not enjoying a game that you actually used to enjoy, or not enjoying an activity that you used to never enjoy. It happens in life all the time, not just for video games. And I also found me having that same experience as well. It's like, hey, if I think about it, I was actually enjoying this game. Now, there's some things that I was being critical of, but because I was putting an extremely negative spin on my criticism of this, I actually stopped enjoying it as a result, so it started tarnishing that. You started focusing on the real negative side of that. So I think it is important to try and put a positive things. Now, there's a time and place for cynicism and extreme negativity, but I think for the most part, it's very possible to move through a lot of the things that we tend to automatically default to being cynical about, to instead being critical of, with a positive spin on it. So the long and the short of it is that me being positive all the time was a way to deal with me not enjoying things in life. It was a way to help me enjoy a life a lot more, and as a result, it was also a great way of dealing with depression for me as well. It's much easier to bounce back from a particularly nasty slump when you can start to put a positive spin on negative things that are happening, which can be very, very, very difficult to do when you are suffering from depression. That's Many people have it worse than I do and have a much harder time of doing that, but it is something that you can exercise as a muscle and work on. So it is a way of dealing with things like depression, but it's also just a way to enjoy life more. That's my main reason for being so positive all the time. And it also comes across better to other people too. Think about this. You're in a social situation, and you have to tell someone that you like, you care about, you're friends with, or you want to maintain a professional relationship with them. You have to tell them something negative about them. It's very personal. Something that they worked on that they're passionate about, or something that they do. You have to tell them something very negative about them. Try next time that you find yourself in this situation to instead approach it with a positive criticism rather than a cynical criticism. And you'll find that their reactions to it will be much better. In fact, even if you're just talking about not maintaining their friendship or anything, you don't care about them at all, but you want them to do something, if you put a positive spin on it, they're much, much more likely to actually do it. So, food for thought. That's my musings for this Monday. Hopefully I get you guys Monday musings more consistently on Mondays in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed this probably quite windy Monday musings from Santa Monica. Been thoroughly enjoying myself. I look forward to seeing you guys when I get back. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.